So I want to go over your sense of peer review and then kind of connect the key ideas and questions we got from reading these articles. I'm kind of partial to Donald Murray's The Maker's Eye. I think this is a super applicable and helpful piece in terms of helping us write better. And they each have good stuff in them. So I kind of want to go over the main ideas, the three articles on peer review. And this is another way of saying this is workshopping. So what do we do when we workshop each other's work? The main idea that I hope that I want to, or at least that I'm curious about how it lands with you all, is that peer review is a huge way to improve our own writing. Does this make sense? If I'm able to give other people really good feedback on their work, that's naturally going to help me become a better writer, help me improve my own writing, right? Because that's obvious. Because then I can use that same critical lens on others' work, on my own work as well. The other thing I'm hoping that this is going to start adding more texture to is what we talked about the very first week, that reading is very parallel with writing. And so an advanced writing class is also by nature going to be an advanced reading class. And one of the things I'm seeing, or one of the things I'm hoping in after looking at your first round of notes and some of your other reading notes, is we're not just talking about comprehending information and conveying that information. We're talking about how we use our attention, what we're paying attention to. What we're paying attention to and how we're paying it. Oops, it is a bad word. What we're paying attention to and how we're paying attention. It's one of my favorites. Someone in this class is into self-development, self-improvement. Can't remember who said this, if it was Austin Kleon or someone else. Basically, is like, just pay attention to what you pay attention to. That's all you need to know. When we pay attention to how we pay attention, I think that's really what I'm hoping to get at today. Okay, that's enough for me. What did you all say about, in your experiences of peer review, maybe what makes good peer review from bad peer review? Is there any big high level things that came immediately? Yeah, Annalise.
Like a law, maybe peer review is good, but I feel like what I want from peer reviews is like more like where they needed more clarification, like that as an object, what they
Yeah, so I do hope that when we do peer review, we want to kind of focus on the big picture, not just editing. Yeah, Spencer. Yeah. Don't pretend like you know better than them. Alice and then Lakin.
Sort of write it as if it's a conversation.
Yeah.
And also be supportive and encouraging.
So instead of, we don't just want to just critique. And then write comments as a conversation. We're not correcting their work. That's offensive, actually. Lakin and then Nick.
Don't write comments like your teacher.
What should you write comments as?
Weird.
I almost wanted to say as a friend.
I love that. It said friendly review in Strauss.
Yeah, Straub, whatever. Yeah, the idea of being friendly to them. Although someone in my last class said you don't want to give peer review to a friend. I didn't quite understand. I understand anyway. And you don't. So instead of, don't write comments as a teacher. Nick? I'm going to change this a little bit. Instead of pointing out logical inconsistencies, point out what you think are logical inconsistencies. Again, you're trying to offer perspective more than tell them what is better or worse. So you could just say, I read this as a logical inconsistency. It seems logically inconsistent to me. I'll leave it up to you whether or not it ultimately is. It's your work. Maybe you want maybe you have that logical inconsistency in there for some kind of purpose that I didn't read because you're smarter than me. So it's a really good one. Other ones. I feel like one of the biggest things that I almost just want to say is
Give a shit. Do it.
Someone said that this TikTok of this woman was just going around like this. Her partner's like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm waiting for some shits to fall from the sky so I can give them to you. It's terrible.
Nice.
It's interesting, and we're going to add to a little bit of this, but why should we care about peer review? There's a couple different answers to this, Spencer. Yeah. And what are we actually like? What hopefully we can connect peer review to like the goals in this class, I guess, Alice.
Being a better reader.
Yeah. To practice reading and writing. Moreover, like one of the biggest skills I hope you get from this class is your ability to engage with different people over complex and in complex situations. Being a good team player. Have we been in peer review groups with people that just seem to kind of be oblivious to how their comments land to everyone else? I've been there, like in the oblivious seat, not realizing that my comments were not taken the way that I intended them to be taken. Have we ever been in that seat where we've given some comments and we realize later that our comments were actually kind of oblivious, like we're the ones that are being oblivious? Yeah, okay. That's kind of what I hope to improve. Anything else on so far? Yeah, Allie.
It's not. Ooh, like when you're just like, oh, that was great. You did awesome. Like
Yeah.
that's really good.
Can I say, so give specific feedback and questions?
In full sentences.
I'm not going to put that because I don't like full sentences.
Okay.
But that raises a really good point. You don't just want to say good job or almost or BS. You want to actually give them something. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about the way I do peer review, or the way I'm going to encourage us to do it, is that one of the main things we're going to do is start a conversation, ask questions before you start. This is honestly, it's about consent. What kind of feedback would you like? How many of you like more critique than praise? Like you want people to be harsh with your work? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8. How many of you like more praise than critique? Like you want people to be encouraging and supportive of your work? No one. Usually there's more people that. How many people want like an even balance of both? That's one question you could ask. Another one is how far along in the process are you? Is this like a very shitty first draft? Or is this like you're already on your third draft here? You think you would give different feedback if it was like, I'm really close to turning this in versus this is like the shittiest right out of the gate. I haven't done any rereading of this yet. Yeah, Alice.
It says that you should like have a conversation and respond to your peer reviewer.
Yep.
But if you ask the questions before you start reviewing and the writer doesn't get back to you, can you just continue on?
Yeah,
Or
I
do you
think
just have to think about that stuff and kind of consider who they are as an individual and where they are in the process.
I think a little bit of both. So you have a conversation before, and depends on like if it's like a timed thing, like we're gonna do. You have a conversation before, you get a kind of outline of the things they're looking for, and then you can make notes as you read. Like a little question here, I'm gonna ask you about this. A little question here. I would just use the word or the letter Q, 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 and then when I have the conversation after them, I'm gonna be like, I was wondering about this. I'm not sure about this feedback, so that's why I just wonder, and I'm gonna ask you about it now. We are going to have all of our peer reviews structured as talky, ready, talky. Yeah, Spencer.
Just what you said about how your comments change, whether it's a first
Yeah.
draft or relation, is that context and all kinds of super important.
Yes. So in Straub says one of the things we're paying attention to is the stage of the draft. So how far along are they? Context of the stage of the draft, of the assignment. This next one's interesting. Of the writer's goals. Is it possible to have different goals? Like we all are coming in with an essay on Wednesday. Might some people have different goals than other people? Might ask like, what are your real goals of this? Are you working on commas, or are you working on like rhetorical awareness? Or are you working on doing the getting started? Yeah, good luck with that. It's the hardest part. Do you want to get like an A plus or a C minus on this? I saw this guy. He's a humor specialist. He coaches people in corporations on how to be more humorous. Anyway, he said that he prided himself. Is that a word? He prided himself throughout college on getting as close to 72% in all of his classes as possible. Any more than that, he thought was incredibly unintelligent.
So interesting.
And I was like, wait a minute. Shouldn't you apply yourself as much as possible? And that was his way of applying himself. Like, why do more? Besides, it's challenging to get a 72%. You slip a little bit. Try a little too hard. Point being, that could be a totally valid goal. You don't want to go into you, and this is, I guess, this is of the writer's goals. One of the big things is just to respect where other people are coming from. You don't want to be like, if you're with a peer that just wants to do the bare minimum to pass the assignment and you want to get an A plus on the assignment, you don't want to judge them for being a worse person than you are because of their CO 300 essay showing. It's like different ways of doing the thing. Right? Likewise, I will not judge you because what do I know? Okay. Let's talk about how many people read The Maker's Eye, Murray? How many people read Straub and Enser? Cool. Can we do the big reading notes questions? What were the key ideas from The Maker's Eye? And as we go, you did a really good job. Maybe we should just end class here. I'm just gonna bold pair. It says, wait, give. Whoops. Oh, whoops. Okay, yeah. Okay, let's do The Maker's Eye. What were the main points here? People that read this, or discussion questions. Daniel.
So part of it is when you're writing the passionate, shouldn't.
It's like start passionately and end critically. Love that. Yeah, Allie. Yeah.
Finished.
It just hits a deadline. Especially with writing. Seems like you can always make it better. Yeah, Nick. Yeah, I like that. No way to perfect it. You just got to do it. Other key points or questions? Yeah, Isabel. Yeah. And yet why I like Murray is that he does give us a step-by-step process. So does NSOAR. There's like a where do I start and where do I go from there? And I think both of these you can kind of find which one works for you. But he gives us this, like, what I thought was most valuable from Murray is this kind of seven-fold process. He says there's 7 things we can pay attention to, and he gives them in order that we should be paying attention to them. Did we catch these? Yeah, Sarah. And he puts them in italics. So he visually organizes them a little bit to basically show, say what those 7 are. Did we get those in our notes? Yeah, Sarah, what did we get?
Information.
Okay, so yeah, actually we can do them all, but I would leave a little bit of room for each of these. First, most important thing is information, which is interesting. Second, 4. Number 2, audience. And then the third one, form, which honestly, I'm going to put this in parentheses because I'm telling you what form this should be in. It should be an academic essay, but I guess, and then after form, not quite voice, and then dimension, and then, oops, wait, where's structure?
Oh, and we're-
Oh yeah, it is after form. Structure, development, dimension, voice. Okay. When the other key thing about this that I want to pay attention to is this is like big picture down to small details. So he makes the point after he gives this list. He says, as writers read and reread, write and rewrite, they move closer and closer to the page until they're doing line by line editing. So it's like when you start the process, just like in good reading, I said, we want to start with scanning and skimming just to see like what's going on. By the way, every essay that you turn into me, guess how I read it?
page by page, and
Yeah, I actually don't read every line of your essays. I'm more choosy. Well, depends on what I see in your and then your topic sentences. What's going on in this essay? What is this student doing? Big picture. Who did they identify as the audience? What did they identify as the exigents? How are they tying it together? How long is their constraint section? 5 lines. How long is this person's constraint section? Oh, 1.5 pages. That tells me something about the essay without actually having to read any of the sentences. Would you agree? Let's say the constraint section is 1.5 pages, and then I start reading the constraint section and you're saying the same thing over and over again. That tells me something. And the person whose constraint section is 4 lines is like just telling me like tons of unique things on each sentence. That tells me something. Longer is not better, but one of the things I'm looking for when I'm reading your work is what is this student doing? And I don't want to get lost in the weeds of your sentences because frankly, that's not as important, at least in some ways, as what the information is that you're able to communicate. That's what I'm going to pay attention to. Okay, so I want to there's a couple of keywords for each of these. When we choose the first thing writers look for, so this is in sequential order. The first thing writers look for when they read their own drafts or someone else's is information. So what kind of information are we looking for? Yeah, specific. What else? Whoops. Yeah, I'm gonna actually save thorough would be in development. It's how deep do you go in with the information? But nice guess, Alice. Thanks for playing.
thank you.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm gonna put the amount of information is gonna be in development as well. If it's too much or too, what we're looking to add or subtract. specific, accurate, and then what's up that's meaningful or significant. I was surprised when I read this that he didn't say valuable. And for me, that's really what good writing is, giving something valuable to your audience. And one of the reasons why it's hard to learn how to write in college, because your reader's getting paid to read what you've written. That will not happen in the real world. You've got to provide value for them. Okay, and then the audience, they say any notes on who the audience is or what you're looking for the audience? You know, what they want and need. It's interesting. Who's the audience for your essay? What do I want and need? A life? No. Not funny.
You have a life, you're getting new granite for your kitchen and your things you're doing.
If having a life was judged by granite for a bathroom remodel, that is not the criteria of life that I want anything to do with. Side note. Let's take a couple things into consideration here. Do you know how many classes I have? 4. How many students in each class? 20, 22. How many essays will I be reading? 80 to 90. Do you think if you were reading 80 to 90 of these essays, would it change the way you read them?
Yes.
What kinds of things would you want or need as a reader of 80 of these essays? Clarity, headings. Wait, what was that? Yeah, I know. This is a challenging part of this gig. Clarity. Yeah, specificity. You're just trying to make it easy on me. And what do I really want to see? That you've met the requirements of the rubric, which the main one is rhetorical awareness. So I'm looking for, as quick as I can, how deeply did they think about the rhetorical situation? Yeah, Sarah? Yes. Ease. Thanks, Sarah. That's really helpful. I'm looking, if there are multiple audiences to the piece, did you identify the multiple audiences? And I did want to say on this sentence you can steal, while there are many audiences, dogs, cats, and parakeets, this essay will only focus on dogs. I don't know if you've seen academic writers do stuff like this. Basically, like, this is a really big, complex thing, but I'm only going to be talking about this piece. I love seeing that because it helps me see that, oh, you're aware that there's multiple people reading this, and you're focusing your analysis on this group or these two groups. Same thing with exigencies. There's multiple exigencies. So it's Masciotra article. The main one I'm going to be looking at is a lack of intimacy, because that's the one that he makes the biggest mistake on. Whatever. Cool. Okay. Form is just like also maybe the genre or the type. Like, for example, is it an email or a cover letter or an academic essay or an Insta reel? Okay, structure is interesting. That's kind of obvious, but this is like the outline, the arrangement of the ideas. He says that the logical sequence, what comes first, second, third, Alice?
For an example of that, be mentioning exigence, audience, constraints in order.
Yes. We haven't said this yet, but it's a good, having an essay map or an introduction where you're like, this essay first describes the exigence of failed intimacy. Second, goes over the two main audiences of college students and middle-aged hoity-toity Atlantic readers. And third, the constraints of loving care for offspring. Now I know in that little bit that I've read what your essay is going to do, and your topic sentence matches that, and it's like, oh, great. I can give this one a 20 out of 20 on structure. Was there a question? Yeah, Nick, thanks. That's a really good one. I had to read this over and over again to understand what I think he means by this. I think dimension has to do with like how the parts of the piece relate to each other. So like my structure would be what goes first, second, and third. The dimension is how long one is compared to two, compared to three. So let's say that, and I will do this actually when I read your rhetorical analysis essays. Let's say the exigence paragraph is super short and the audience paragraph is like, actually you had 4 paragraphs on audience and they're all really long, and the constraint paragraphs is really short. You might tell your peer or ask your peer, do you want more like balance between these different parts? Maybe you could take some out of the audience section and add more to the exigence section. So it looks like, we're going to see this on cover letters too, like a cover letter that's like very short intro paragraph and then a big block paragraph and then a short outro paragraph would be different than one that's 4 even paragraphs. Your syntax, like that is your voice. So your style, or he says tone. There's some cool things he said about voice. Those are great questions. Seriously, Nick, thank you. So wait, before in dimension, I want to say like the yeah, that's interesting. How pleasing it looks, balance between sections. Yeah, we can go there. Just kind of like, yeah, and then for voice, we're looking at tone, authority.
Can you describe what authority means?
Yeah, like how you write about something. Yeah. I believe that the thesis, all right, I believe that the exigence of this essay, comma, if I can take a wild guess, is that maybe the author doesn't think sports should be in high school. As opposed to, the author argues that sports should be out of high school. Sometimes it's actually nicer to play like the humility card, to be like, I'm not sure about this, but I may be the best applicant for this position. Here's why. Like I can be an authority on this, but not an authority on this. You could also write something like, I don't know how an average 55-year-old woman sitting by her poolside would read this Atlantic article, but I can tell you how a 20-year-old college student can read it, or at least this one, because I have a lot of authority over my experience, and this is what's bullshit. I could guess maybe that those people, they might actually really like it. That would be like an example of how I use authority. Another word that I see a lot of students talk about with their own writing is flow. How many of you would like to improve the flow of your writing? And by flow, what do you mean? Like how just one sentence goes into the next one, right? Like how readable it is? I would add like style to that as another way I see this. And how do we get better style and flow? And I haven't defined style yet, Alice.
Reading?
Yeah, I mean, that was a bad question. What are the components of style? Yes, that is one of the two, is the word choice, the words that you use, and yes, like the rhythm or cadence. I'm going to put as sentence variety. What are the various sentences that you use? Is it see Spot run, period. Spot likes cats, period. Get that cat, comma, Spot, exclamation point. Or is it, when looking at the proclivities of adult male border terrier collies, you might notice that they love small cats. Boy, do they love small cats. Okay, yeah. It's like not preferences, but like tendencies. So it's usually like one's sexual proclivities, or like what they prefer. That's usually how it's like their tendencies are. Yeah. What's one of the best ways to improve your sentence variety? Most college students. Use short sentences, period. I hereby challenge you to use 3-word sentences in everything you write for this class. At least 1 or 2.
Challenge is accepted.
Yeah, no. Rhetorical analysis was hard, period. I liked it, period. No, when is it really good to use short sentences? Punchy, when you want to drive a point home. Or if you have long sentence, medium sentence, and then short sentence. What you don't want to do is write like philosophers write, where it's like sentence, like just those giant long sentences the entire page. And no paragraph breaks. I mean, I guess you could. That could be a rhetorical move. You're just like, I really want to impress. I want this person to think I'm really smart, but I don't want them to understand what I'm writing about. So I'm just going to write a giant run-on sentence with a lot of parenthetical, whatever. The other thing that you can improve on your use short sentences and choose verbs. Action verbs. It's the best way to improve your voice or style is to just choose the action verbs. Okay, he says that this is like the big picture moving down to the small details, and we really only want to look at voice if we're like once we clear what we're doing, right? We don't want to very wonderfully and stylistically write about something that doesn't mean anything or doesn't provide any value to an audience. Like, we don't want to work on this until we've gotten this. That's why it's sequential 1 to 3 present 7. That makes sense?
Yes.
Kind of big picture, diving into the small details. Okay. Any other quotes or any other quotes or questions from Murray? What is the maker's eye? What's his title? The maker's eye. How would we define that? Yeah, Ella.
I just put like baker's provider.
Yes. And the maker's eye is, yeah, and the process that we read our writing with. These are all different levels that we could apply to our writing, different ways of seeing. Again, the whole idea of this thing, how we're using our attention. You could probably turn off your sense of like, I don't even care what the sentences or grammar are. I'm only looking for specifics. Where's your best specifics? Okay. Okay. Richard Straub, I think we can do this one a lot sooner. Or quicker. What's the main thing that Straub is saying? Or how would we
How to be a better peer reviewer.
yeah, and what I actually really like the comic at the top of it where there's 2 cave, I think they're men, whatever, cave people, and they're like looking at a cave painting, and the one of them's like, what do you mean? Like, why would you put that there? That's totally gonna mess up the frame at the end. And it was like the first writer and editor, which I thought is actually funny because oftentimes, I don't know, might not happen in school as much, but if you're on a team with other people and they do something that you don't like, things can get a little testy. And you're like, why'd you do that? I think you should do this. And they're like, well, I did it. So how to be a better peer reviewer? What kind of things? We actually already mentioned some of these big ideas. And why I like this one in association with Murray kind of gives us like the mechanics of how we do this. And I think Straub kind of gets like more of like the approach or how we should go about it.
Friendly responder.
Yes. I'm going to say the other big word that I chose to boil this reading down to 1 word is about respect. Respect the writer. Don't tell them what they should change. It's not your work, Lakin. Yes. And I really, in terms of, he also gives us a set of things that we should pay attention to that I think is a helpful list. Yeah, Alice.
Key components.
Yes, so that was that. What are the key components that we pay attention to?
Expect, well, I don't know, I just thought that praise was something that you mentioned, and also like expecting more from the writer. Or recognizing that they have room to be better.
Yeah, I like that. I'm gonna put that up with the respect the writer, but also expect that they could do better. So kind of challenge them. Oh, right. That reminds me when we're reading our own work. One of my favorite quotes from Murray is like, be skeptical. How did he say it? Be skeptical of people's critiques. And even more skeptical of their praise. So just don't take it at face value. He says, familiarize yourself with your blah, 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 blah. The assignment, the writer's interests and aims, the work of the class, which is interesting. Our course goals go from rhetorical knowledge to mechanics. You might want to ask what they're more interested. These are not the same, right? These are very different levels of the writing process. And then the stage of drafting. You definitely get a sense of this, like I want to say like post school, if you're doing collaborative artwork, this always makes me think of what it's like to bring a song to completion and what feedback is appropriate at what stage of the process. If you're listening to the final mix, you do not give critiques on the lyrics. You just don't, because the lyrics have already been recorded and it's not going to be helpful for you to be like, I think actually the lyrics of the second verse could be better. Yeah, thanks, asshole. A comment would have been nice before we tracked them. Now it's going to cost us over $1,000 to fix them. And you're right. And now I can't hear how bad the verse is. Thank you. Versus, you know, you want to give your feedback to the dimension that where you're at, like where it's at. So I thought that was actually really helpful advice. Okay. There's other basic stuff. Where do you put your comments when you peer review? Like where should the comments go? In the margins and at the end. So I'm going to encourage you to do marginal and end comments. Says, is it okay to be short and sweet? And he says, no, just be specific. So instead of saying good job, say, you know, what they could do better. We'll end with a story, I guess. It's a pocket watch. Let's see what time it is.
Oh, you got that drip.
Yeah, all right. Oh no! Clearly not practice at checking out the time on my pocket watch. Okay. Kind. Be nice. I was a mentor for CO 150 teachers a while ago. It's about 6 years ago. And I'm in my office and I hear this. I'm like, okay, oh, who's there? And it's a new teacher. She's kind of like shaken up, deer in the headlights kind of look. And I'm like, what's going on? How can I help? And she's like, so we had our first peer review today. I'm like, yeah. She's like, I don't, can you actually just look at this and like tell me what you think, and then I want to say what I did and I want to see what you would do. I could not imagine a more cruel set of comments from a student to another student. It was it was all, there was no positive comments. It was all tearing this piece down. The end comment was something to the effect of, I would definitely restart this essay from scratch. But honestly, you might want to talk with the teacher about whether or not you even belong in this class. There is a CO 130 that's like a remedial version for people that haven't quite gotten the basics of reading and writing yet. And you clearly in this category of someone that needs to do more work before you're able to perform at the level that this class requires. So I'm not sure really like if you should be here or not. But Hope this helps.
Guys cry together.
I was like, oh my God. And she's like, the student came up to me at the end of class and she like started crying and like couldn't like she was like, I don't know how because these peer comments were like so intelligent at one level, like they seemed really sophisticated, so like by the end you were like, oh wow, this person really like knows what they're talking about. That was the vibe that they had, was like, I'll fix this for you and then tell you to get out of the class because you're clearly not up to the standard that this class should be. What do you think? What would you do if you were the teacher in that situation?
Address the individual who did that, kick them out.
Kick them out. No, you can't do that. That's against the rules for sure.
No, I would talk to them.
Even be not go that far, but like kind of give them a taste of how it does. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
be like, why do you not
I wouldn't do that either. Just, I mean, you could be, but
teach this thing?
yeah, so that's basically, there is some there could be some like preempting, like don't do that. But you almost as an instructor, you would just kind of imagine that no one would do that. Like you would, here's the deal. You would guess that people would have a basic rhetorical awareness and kindness. I don't think this person was cruel. They just literally had no awareness of how their comments would be read. They were just like showing off all day long. How would you write something like that?
Like, they're so good. Yeah,
That's pure
like,
hate.
what makes you
Something on my SM is like, you should probably change classes. That's like inside of
Point being, okay, yeah, no, they were not right. So the writing wasn't great, but that's kind of what a draft should be. The draft should be kind of shitty.
Yeah.
So point
Can
being,
you tell that to everyone?
yeah, I will. I will remind, and honestly, some people on Wednesday will come in with a more polished draft than other people. So yeah, I don't. So yeah. I think that's all we have time for. If you have questions, feel free to email me. I will be around tomorrow. I hope there's a lot of information today. We're gonna come back to it on Wednesday and use it, hopefully, so that we get better. Let me stop this recording. Yeah, cookie.